How you doing? Well, we have another video, and this esoteric. Finally, we're putting aside the collective readings and going over the occult. I have many videos, not videos, but many content on the occult. And I held off for such a long time from giving them to you because of the ops attacking and the problems with trying to take away my channel and trying to destroy and copyright my content. And then there's the computer teeter tottering, and like, God, that's enough, you know? But, listen, it comes with the program, it comes with the territory. If you're going to be successful at what you do, and I certainly am, then I have to take with it what comes with it. Who did? Where's my glasses? Let me find out where my glasses are. I came back, I got a camel coat. Oh yeah, and a few other goodies. And it did cost a pretty penny, but I'm worth it. Sound like a commercial, right? Okay. Oh, let me get up. I'm in my room here, overlooking the patio. See, this is the backyard. Yeah, it's huge. It was snowing yesterday. Yes, I'm telling you, I had no idea that the state of Maryland was so volatile. You know, oh, it's really, really something. Let me see if I there's my glasses. I meant to have it before getting on the air, but it is what it is. Who else is here? Who else is here? Well, we're talking today about the ego. I know that everybody knows gives you con gives you content, and it also gives you the identity of who you are. Without the ego, man is is two-dimensional. No awareness, no knowledge, and no spirit. The ego encases and holds the spirit, which is separate from the ego. The spirit is the energy field that surrounds the entire body and fuels it. So then you have the soul. Now, for you to make clarity of what this is, the shadow. You've heard me talk about the shadow. The shadow is the id. The ego is the spirit, and the superego is the soul. But the one in control of all three is the ego. And the ego, in the sense of consciousness, awareness, it governs and controls the personality, which is another faction, has nothing to do with ego. But the ego controls the personality as it controls the shadow. And it has a limit to its development. The soul overrides the ego, but it doesn't do it invasively and allows the ego to run the personality, if that makes sense. Okay, the if you have, you cannot exist without an ego, because the ego is the steering wheel of a car. The ego is consciousness. I'm going to repeat this throughout the series. It is the Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. These are personalities of the ego. The ego is not one or the other. It expresses all 12 personalities, depending on when the month is one, day, and the year is three. The id, the superego, and the ego. The soul, ego. The shadow and the ego are together. The soul is not. The soul is detached from the ego. Because if the soul was attached to the ego, then we will know that we are God in human form. We will know spirit. And then the earth matter that we are encased in will have no relevance. Because we know what's going to happen, we know what we are, and we know that we're going to eventually leave this place and go back to God. So the soul is the actual engram or the actual template of the soul, which has decided to incarnate into a person having ego and spirit. The spirit and the soul merge together to create a personality, which is the 12 signs of the zodiac. And that is how the ego has its expression. Okay? I have a diagram that I created to simplify this for you. Scientists don't respect what I'm talking about because scientists concern themselves with the scientific explanation and the scientific dissemination, dispension of the ego through personality. But they don't believe in astrology and they don't believe in the 12 personalities of astrology. What they believe is that personality is created through empirical existential experience, which is true. It's true, but it's not the only way that the ego expresses itself. Okay, scientists can marvel, and I listen. Listen, I used to be a social worker and licensed psychotherapist, and I know that the ego has many structures. There's a lot to the ego, but we're still talking about earthly externalization of the internal process of the ego. There is no mention or talk about the spiritual component of the ego. Okay, so occultists like myself give you an explanation that this structure of the ego, defined by social scientists, is not enough to explain the different categories of humans. Scientists cannot explain the different categories of humans. They know them, but they can't explain why they're there. And they cannot connect it to the ego as a singularity, only as a estimation, because they don't understand it. But they claim that they do, but they don't. Because if that was the case, you will have a complete scientific explanation for certain types of personalities that are born, especially those that are pathological and even psychic. That is something that the scientists do not explain, but yet it is a content of the ego. And as an esoteric scientist myself, we can explain it. Here, we have a circle, the ego. and is broken in three parts: the soul, the spirit, and the shadow. All three compose the ego structure. Now, it is still a yin and yang phenomenon, for the ego has a duality, has a polarity. And we define this by the full moon and the new moon and the half crescent. This explains the ego and the shadow. Then we have a four component of the ego. It is here that defines the type of personality and the type of human being that's going to be born, that's going to be encased in personality. Number one, first we see here the dark triangles, this and this, and you have here a psychopath. Here you have the consensus, which is the general human population, and here you have the initiate, those who are leaving the herd mentality, entering initiation. And initiates are a particular type of people that are governed by spirit, not the ego. And this is something that scientists are not able to explain. How can then you define the ego according to scientific terms with leaving out in the equation the spiritual? Psychics, tarot card readers, mediums, seers, that's a whole different category of humans which they do not know how to define in basis and in reference to the ego. They leave it alone. They don't touch it. But you talk to us and we'll tell you. The ego is a structure for the physical body and the personality. But outside of that, it is extremely spiritual and it has its own component as well. And the component that it has survives the physical aspect of the ego. So now we have the ego breaking into different parts of personality structures because it's supposed to be guided, and it is guided by the soul. Now, as an esoteric scientist, and many people like me, spiritualists, earth angels, light workers, we don't know exactly what the soul is. We cannot break it up or look at it into a microscope. But neither can scientists either. So both disciplines are at odds as to how to define the soul structure within context of the ego. It doesn't exist. Only conjecture exists. It's a guess. You have humans like Albert Einstein. Where will you put him in a category? Or geniuses like him? They don't fit the model of the ego as scientists, social scientists define it. He's different, but he's part of the model of the human spectrum, which is not going to be evident in the physical manifestation of the ego, but to the spiritual, which has a whole different hierarchy and paradigm which we know nothing about. So I understand that the ego is a relative term. Excuse me. You have different types of human beings. And what about those who are mentally retarded or mentally challenged, that's the politically correct term to use, and psychotic killers, sociopaths? Where do they come from? How do they become this way? Where is the genetic blueprint that defines this population of people? Scientists cannot determine what it is, even though it's within the confines of social sciences. So they have to create data, they have to do research. And for the most part, it's good. They have a good grasp as to what it is, but they don't understand its origin. And that's where we come in. We let you know what the origin is. But even in letting you know that it's spiritual, we cannot define what that is, if that makes any sense. So, how do you control the ego? Now, I have to say this though. The ego, because again, we're dealing with polarity, right? If we're going to talk about the ego as a spiritual polar opposite of the physical, then that means that in the physical there has to be a portion of the body that the ego exists, because then it's too abstract. And the ego does have a physical component in the body. It just like the soul is a physical component. The you have. And do you know what it is? The ego, if we're talking physicality, is in the blood. The ego resides in the blood. Yes, that's a mystery like a motherfucker, but it's true. And in esoteric scientists, we will tell you that the home of the ego is in the human blood of every human being. Guys, thank you so much. Please donate. Please give. 667-495-7911 so we can continue to support the channel and bring more wonderful, interesting information for you. And of course, CashApp Fernando, FERNA, number 5, NDO. And you can go for a reading or for a birth chart and join Patreon where we have specific content. We haven't yet uploaded any content yet. We're still in the workings of it. And for those of you who are interested in joining the school is going back up again. Uncle Fernando has returned.